movie with us. The issue is bigger than I think than we all imagine. Here I am. Hi. Again, my name is Crystal Porter. I am the Executive Director of Renewable now, which is located in North Minneapolis. We familiarize and educate the community about renewable energies. Welcome to the folks that joined us for the panel discussion. I wanted to start off by allowing the folks that have been invited here to speak to introduce themselves, to say your name and what you do, or what organization you represent, or what constituency you represent, and then we'll go into the questions after that. Starting with sorry, I got muted there.
Sorry.
So if we could go down the line, our panelists, if we could go ahead and go down the line, you just introduce yourself, your name, and then what constituency you represent or what organization you represent, and go ahead and just jump in, whoever wants to go first.
Christelle, why don't you pick people?
Okay, that's fine. All right. So if Stiv, is Stiv Wilson on?
Let's see. He is not here. I'm sure he'll be here any second.
Okay.
We can
Awesome.
someone else.
All right. So if Representative Frank Hornstein could to say hello to the group.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Crystal and Kyle, for involving me again. I'm State Representative Frank Hornstein. I represent the district in parts of downtown and southwest Minneapolis. I'm a lifelong environmental activist. I worked as an environmental organizer for 7 years at Clean Water Action. And one of the issues I worked on was stopping garbage incineration, which was part of the movie tonight, and also been working a lot lately on climate justice and climate change, and really happy to be here. And it's wonderful to see my friend Senator Jeff Hayden.
Yes, and then we'll just go on with the next person, Jeff. If you could.
Hi, you guys. My name is Jeff Hayden. I am the senator, Senate District 62, and I'm glad to be here with my mentor on environmental issues, Representative Frank Hornstein, and the great work that he has done. As many of you know, South Minneapolis is kind of the hub right now of environmental justice and environmental racism. My other mentor, Representative Karen Clark, is probably fighting right now, still trying to stop really heavy industrial and unsustainable uses by, frankly, the city of Minneapolis in the most porous part of my district, or the district that's had the most environmental racism and impact near the Little Earth community there. And I'm glad to have worked with Frank and Karen to partnered with the EPNI group, the East Phillips Environmental Group, to really start to raise that issue, especially in that part of South Minneapolis and North Minneapolis, due to the incinerator, due to the arsenic triangle, the bituminous plant, and all of those other uses that get concentrated in indigenous and ethnic communities. So glad to represent them, glad to do everything I can to use state resources to kind of stop or at least bring light and hopefully mitigate the damage that's been done in those communities.
Yeah, thank you. And then Janiece from Fresh Energy, if you could introduce yourself and say a little bit about what you do and what your work entails.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me tonight. Janiece Watts, she, her pronouns. I work at an organization called Fresh Energy, which is a renewable energy policy organization, but I've worked in waste and environmental justice for a long time, kind of throughout my life's work. And so, yeah, I coming to the discussion with really that lens of how energy generation and even as you saw in the film about incineration, how it's touted as waste to energy. So really coming to discussion with that kind of lens. And clearly incineration and waste energy is a pretty false premise and is very dangerous for our planet. So yeah, so that's kind of me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I would like to introduce Jessica Arika from the Green Partners Program at Hennepin County. And if you could introduce yourself and some of the work you do, that would be great.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jessica Arika. I work at Hennepin County with the Green Partners Grant Program. My main focus is residential organics recycling, and we have a wide range of programs that we have for residents in Hennepin County. Thank you.
Awesome. Yes, I've worked with Jessica a lot in recycling programs and familiarizing and educating communities about how to recycle properly. So that's a very important issue that obviously this whole movie was about. And Marco Hernandez from Copal, if you could introduce yourself, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, hello, my name is Marco Hernandez, and I'm the Environmental Justice Organizer for Copal, which stands for Communities Organizing for Latino Power and Action, but in Spanish es Comunidades Organizando el Poder y Acción Latina. I'm also recently appointed as one of the board members on the Minnesota Council of Latino Affairs, representing Congressional District 4, and also a member of the BIPOC Table 2 with Janiece and Charles. And so a little bit about the work that we've been doing at Copal. We have brought immigrants and also activists, ecofeminists from Central America to do a tour around the state in different colleges and also to different organizations to talk about what's been happening in Central and South America when it comes to the climate crisis. Why have there been a lot of caravans coming to the United States or to other parts outside of Central and South America? And also doing a delegation trip down there as well with a group of environmentalists. We also brought in Attorney General Keith Ellison and Representative Ray Dean with us to go witness some of the climate crisis in Central America, but also talking with organizers down there as well, with influential leaders of the reasons why they decided to stay, and just hearing their powerful stories from them, just deciding to stay and help their communities out, helping them and empowering their community members to fight against institutional discrimination from extractive actors.
Yeah, awesome. And then we've got Charles Frempong-Longdon from the Sierra Club and many other hats that he wears. And if you could introduce yourself and give us a little snippet of what you are working on and what you have worked on.
Definitely. Thank you so much. My name is Charles Frempong-Longdon Jr. I use he, they pronouns. I'm an environmental justice organizer with the Sierra Club North Star chapter. I apologize for the dim lighting. I'm still adjusting to my new bedroom office, so still good in that respect. But as far as the work that I have been involved with, as an environmental organizer with the Sierra Club, my main job has been putting relationship forward and basically creating a map of the Twin Cities and different issues of environmental justice that exist around our metro area. So that has included working with Janiece and Marco on various projects in relation to the Herc Trash Incinerator and building out a coalition of different BIPOC organizers all across Minnesota. So I think I am still adapting to a new digital format and finding how to hold space for folks. So I'm very excited to participate in an event like this where we can have so many wonderful people on the same call.
Yeah. Awesome. And did Stiv join us yet, Kyle?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm sure he'll be here.
Okay. We're still waiting on the filmmaker to arrive. And he's been in high demand lately because there's a lot of these going on throughout the internet of this film being shown in groups like this, which is really cool because these discussions are very important. We need to have them. If you've noticed, all of our panelists are well, the majority of our panelists are people of color. They are Black and Indigenous. And so that's what we had titled this, this discussion was our BIPOC panelist table. And I wanted to highlight, because a lot of times when I end up in conversations like this, it is a very white space. I usually end up being the only person of color in the space. And so it's nice to highlight folks that are doing this work that represent communities of color. And it's very empowering, especially for someone like me or for anybody else who is not familiar with this type of work. So Stiv, sorry, I always do that. Stiv has joined us. So Stiv Wilson, he is the filmmaker of this amazing movie that we just watched. And Stiv, if you could introduce yourself and let us know why you decided to make this film. And you're muted, sorry.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm a bit late here. We're actually out on a 2.23 mile walk. But yeah, The Story of Plastic was a film that was a dream of mine about 10 years ago when I visited the Philippines for the first time and saw parts of plastic pollution that I hadn't understood before, and it had quite an effect on me. And I vowed, standing in a landfill in the Philippines, to make this film then, because there was a humanitarian cost to that. And that just started making the journalist in me ask a lot of questions. And essentially, The Story of Plastic is the result of those questions, both upstream and downstream, answering the basic question of, where does something go when you discard it? And how is that impacted by where you live? And where is it made? And who is affected along the way? And that's where this film came about, and really connecting the system for the entire supply chain and showing that plastic pollutes at every step of the way. And yes, biodiversity is affected at the end, but people are in the crosshairs on the front end. And I don't think that was fully understood. So telling this from the perspective of that lived experience was the mission of Story of Plastic. And really grateful for you all to watch it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm grateful that I've been able to watch it now 4 times, and it still pisses me off. It's still, and I'm still learning from it too. Like every single time I watch it, there's a piece that I didn't hear or I didn't sit and think about because I was still trying to process the thing that happened 10 seconds before that. So it's a wonderful film. You did a wonderful job, and really appreciate it.
Let's also, I'm going to give Ukasha Dekane a chance to introduce himself. He just joined.
I apologize, Ukasha. I'm so sorry you weren't. I didn't add you on the agenda, and I'm so glad that you were able. We didn't know if you were going to be able to make it or not, and I'm so glad you were able to make it. So, Ukasha, please first unmute yourself because you're muted right now, and then if you could just introduce yourself and tell us the amazing work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Crystal and Kyle. Thank you for having me. It was time that I was getting ready for iftar, and I said, yes, I can just tune in and be, present. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, my name is Ukasha Dekane, and I'm the executive director of Freo, which is a local nonprofit that works with the East African youth and adults in our communities. And one of my main work was educating the East African community on environmental issues. There's a great initiative right now. We have been working with an amazing women group who are a sewing group that was trying to use the idea of tote bags, which was used in Somalia back in the days, to revive it. So that it can be a substitute for the plastic bags. This is, when we talk about environment and, our role in saving the environment right now, the question of Martin Luther King comes in, which was, the life is the most persistent. I mean, what are you doing for others? How are we trying to save the environment for other generation to come. So right now I am serving on the Energy and Environment Commission for the city of Edina. And also I was appointed by the United Nations to be a UN champion for the climate. So this year we celebrated the Earth Day, which with the theme, it was 50 years of Earth Day. The theme was climate action. I mean, how are we going to be centered on this? And I am sure tonight we're going to talk about it. So again, yeah, so that's pretty much a short introduction of mine.
Cool. Awesome. So glad.
I just shared the link to it, and the organization that he's referring to is the Somali American Women's Action Center.
Yes.
And run by Fartun Ismail.
Yep.
I've just been so thrilled to be connected with you and Fartun and the work that you two are doing. And we will share the organizations that Ukasha runs and also Fartun in our resource guide. So thank you for being here, Ukasha. And Ramadan
Mubarak.
Mubarak.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Kyle, if you could please introduce yourself as well, Kyle. I don't think you've gotten a chance to introduce yourself.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Yes, I am Kyle Samajima, and I live in South Minneapolis. I am the executive director of a nonprofit called Minneapolis Climate Action, and one of our program areas is zero waste, and truly we and I are so excited to really see the intersectionality that is happening right here in Minneapolis. I mean, I can feel palpably like the energy and the connection that's happening around that intersectionality of climate, environmental justice, racial justice, climate change. Let's just bring in COVID-19 because like this whole pandemic has to do with how we are relating to our planet and the environment. So I just want to welcome everyone for being here. I am so honored to be a part of this and looking forward to really effective collaboration with every single one of you, whether you're a senator, a representative, run a nonprofit, or you're a citizen. Thank you.
All right, so thank you for that. Now, Stiv, before I dive into the other panelists, there's one question that I had for you. I remember when we were having a conversation about why you had made the movie, and then we went into the movie itself, but then you had talked about the Peak Plastic Foundation. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. We finished the film. We literally finished the film about 2 days before it premiered last fall at a film festival here in California. But the folks who made the film, the production team, really wanted to keep doing this sort of intersectional storytelling because we saw the net benefit. And I think, in the NGO space, there are a lot of well-resourced groups, and the frontline and the fence line groups, both in the United States and in the global South primarily, spend all their resources on going straight to the problem because it's existential. It's an existential threat. And there's incredible leadership and stories there and solutions, and there just isn't investment in marketing or communicating that. And so Peak Plastic Foundation is meant to do that, to elevate and amplify really good work that is going on in this world by people who are not spending the resources on trying to market it or brand it or Instagram channel it or whatever, but to sort of translate and help elevate from their perspective. We take a much more journalistic approach than an editorial approach. I mean, obviously, we're pretty against the massive chemical build out, of course, but really trying to tell stories from the perspective because of those who are affected and those who are leading, on a local level. So we're going to keep doing this. And we're focusing mostly on massive markets, opening markets of single-use plastics in Asia Pacific and Africa in the form of the sachet, which the film talks about a lot. And then frontline and fence line communities around incineration and petrochemical refining. It is amazing the work that is going on in the EJ space and the Ohio River Valley on the Gulf Coast right now. I mean, it is mind-blowingly awesome, but it's not being documented properly, and we want to help do that.
Yeah. I think it's really, really important. I think that like entertainment, anything that we watch, I feel like entertainment is so important. As far as like marketing, advertisements, everything that we see on a regular basis, everything that drives us is art and entertainment. And I feel like it is one of the best ways to get this issue across to the wider community. So I really appreciate it. And I wish you the best of luck with that endeavor. I really do. So Representative Frank Hornstein.
I just wanted to say there's a lot of interesting stories to tell in Minneapolis. So we'll be coming through.
Good. Please do.
I hope to work with many of you on this call. It's a pretty impressive panel and a pretty impressive.
Yes. Thank you very much. It's a wonderful hodgepodge of my very amazing network, and me and Kyle's amazing network that we've developed over the years. And we're blessed to have the leaders that we do in this community for sure. So Representative Frank Hornstein, if you could, hi.
Hi, good to see you again.
Hello. If you could explain or at least like dig in a little bit about what work you are currently working on that is related to this issue of plastics, related to this movie, and anything that we could keep our eye open for, and we can, as a constituency, support you in that work.
Yeah, well, thank you, and thanks everybody for being here, and it's wonderful to be a part of this. Thank you, Kyle. What people may not realize is I teach a class in sustainability studies at the University of Minnesota, and Kyle was one of my star students a couple of years ago. So it's wonderful to see you out in the world and doing this environmental activism. So I'll just highlight a couple issues, Crystal, that really I think the film crystallized for me, in many ways how they relate to one another. It's the Line 3 pipeline. We had the example of the activists fighting the pipeline in Pennsylvania. It's a similar situation here in Minnesota. This pipeline is bringing dirty tar sands from Alberta, or proposed to, and then it'll be exported all over the world, such as we saw in the movie. And then also trying to really address this question of garbage incineration. As Janiece said, it's not really waste to energy. I think it's waste of energy. And we have this sitting right in downtown Minneapolis, bordering the north side. That incinerator was built there, I think, I think it's a classic case study of an environmental justice issue. And so here it's laid bare, the COVID-19 crisis is laid bare. What happens when you have facilities like this in frontline communities or bordering frontline communities? Asthma rates increase, all sorts of respiratory illnesses are caused by those toxic materials that are going into the air and landfilled in the form of ash. So you have the beginning of this plastic cycle symbolized by the Line 3 pipeline, again, an environmental justice issue because of the connection to indigenous land and the fact that it's going in or near treaty territories in northern Minnesota. And then you have the end of the plastic cycle, which is all of the toxics that are released into the air and water, and incineration is part of that. So with line 3, there's that this is currently in the permitting process. There's a water permit that is being discussed now by the Pollution Control Agency, and a lot of groups are getting very active and have been active for many years, but even additional groups are now involved in this fight. And so I think you're going to see over the summer some increased activity trying to make sure that the state will re-examine this project. You know, we know that it's documented the environmental problems with this. It's the dirtiest kind of oil one could have from the Alberta tar sands. And if this is permitted, it's really the equivalent of 50 coal-fired power plants. So this is really going to be a disaster for the climate and the environment. On the incinerator, I introduced legislation. You know, unfortunately, our legislative session wasn't cut short, but we had a lot of work that wasn't done because of COVID-19. We're in session, we're working on a lot of issues, but I was on the cusp of potentially having a hearing on a bill that would not consider incineration renewable energy. Do you know, and I'll conclude with this, do you know that garbage incineration under Minnesota state law is considered renewable? And of course, it's the dirtiest form of energy we can have. There's very little energy actually produced in it, but on a per kilowatt basis, it's dirtier than coal. And yet in our law, it is classified the same way as wind and solar. And so this is a travesty, both for the climate and the the broader energy policy of the state. So we hope that we can change that law, and that'll be something for next year. I'm very inspired by the BIPOC table. I'm very inspired by the work that is being done around the incinerator. I think Marco and others are doing incredible organizing, and I'm very optimistic that over time, I think people will realize the folly of this, and this will be phased out. But it's going to take a lot of organizing, and we know we can do it. We beat an incinerator in Dakota County with grassroots organizing, and we can do that here in Hennepin as well. And in fact, the Sierra Club and others prevented Hennepin County from expanding the incinerator a few years ago. They want to actually expand it by 200 more tons a day. And again, citizens stood up, particularly the EJ community stood up and stopped that. So yeah, we have the beginning and the end and the middle of the plastic cycle here in Minnesota. But Crystal, to your question, pay attention to line 3, pay attention to the BIPOC table and what they're doing on the HERC plant. I think those are really 2 very important issues for the EJ community and that we're all working on together.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So much. That's really important work. And I thank you so much for being in that space for us.
Thank you for your work and everyone's work on this panel. It's just so inspiring and energizing in a moment like this.
And Christelle, I just want to say that, you know, for Representative Hornstein and Senator Hayden and everyone on the panel, that, you know, one of our goals of doing this kind of event, besides increasing awareness, is to create that movement to get these issues taken care of, to work on the legislation, and to really build that movement that I know we have the workings of, and that's already being done. But really, that's the goal of doing this. You know,
it does take a movement, and we can win. And I think the movie showed that the power of organizing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so Senator Jeff, if you could jump in, Senator Hayden, if you could jump in and let us know some of the work that you're doing, how we can support you, and especially, you know, I didn't get to ask this to Representative Hornstein, but you can, I'm sure that you could name some files, some bills that we need to be able to focus on, especially since we really missed out on this legislative session this year, especially being present, and things that will be coming up in the next session that we can support.
Well, thank you, and I am going to defer to Frank for some of the bills that are moving up. One is because Frank is in the majority, and not only is a great environmentalist, but also the chair of our transportation committee,
Yes.
which has has a lot of synergy to them. What I will just kind of say and bring to the table is most of my work beyond leadership is done in the healthcare space. And this, in my intro, I talked about the ethnic group and others. Frankly, I am fighting some of our own friends in the Minneapolis City Council, in the city of Minneapolis, at expanding industrial uses in communities that have been disproportionately affected by those uses. And the thing that I will say to you guys is that we have to, well, it's a couple of messages. One is, let's be careful when we talk about the way that we think about our carbon footprint in aggregate. And so there's a way sometimes that looks like it's going to decline. However, it declines in other parts of the city or the states, but gets concentrated. Once again, gets concentrated in certain other communities. And so you can see an overall decline all over the city, but the concentration of that is in the near North Minneapolis and in the Phillips neighborhood. And so I have great friends there, and they're very progressive. And I think Representative Hornstein has been influenced by this as well. But we will take pockets of our city or even our states and concentrate them there. And those often are places in where folks don't have a voice, they don't have advocacy. They're already dealing with what I call the Maslow's theory. They're just trying to eat and find a safe place to live. It's places where you see our tent encampments, our homeless areas. We've all kind of saw that space there, that community, where some of our lowest income folks that often don't have the ability to come to the Capitol and lobby us, that's where some reason, I don't know how, is where often we will place our heaviest use. So I think that Representative Hornstein talked about the HERC, and that it probably wasn't coincidental, or it was ironic that it was placed right at the foot of North Minneapolis, as opposed to maybe in Lake Harriet or Lake Nokomis or other places in our community, places that Representative Hornstein represents that I know that he has nothing to do with, but like there's a reason for that. My parents or my grandparents lived right where the freeway came through, and I-35W. We hear about Rondo and 94, but all over this country, the Dan Ryan, 71 in Kansas City, the 405 in Los Angeles, the one in the Bronx, they all went through communities of color, and then the after effects of that is high incidence of cancer and asthma and all of those things that come with pollution. And so I just thank you guys for being here and to talking about this, the Black Indigenous tables that are coming together that are really, and I'm glad to support that as much as possible, because I think the simple message is the more people we get that's closest to where the environmental racism is, the bigger we can grow those groups to be able to fight back against that. So my message, and once again, Senator I'm promoting them to now. Representative Hornstein can give you things that are moving, and we're having this fight, and COVID has really exacerbated our health disparities in this state. We have some of the best health care in the state, but some of the worst disparities. So I'm really puzzled and have been trying to figure out why. And I think that the work that you guys are doing in a very organic way can explain not only the delivery of our healthcare system, but why we're suffering with such these chronic diseases anyways. And a lot of it, and most of it, as you know, is due to where we live in the brownfields and the arsenic triangles and the Superfund sites and the heavy industrial uses that are concentrated in communities like my own, or North Minneapolis, or all over this country. So, my message, as much as anything else, is for us to continue to come together. It's good to see so many allies and brown and black and indigenous faces on this call, because it's going to take a movement to be able to stop that. The last thing I'll say is, don't be fooled by kind of this like rhetoric of people who say that they want to do it. Kyle, I know very well, and many of you I don't. Well, it's time for action. It's not time for rhetoric. It's not time for pie in the sky policy. It's time for us to hold us, those that make public policy, hold those corporations that was in the movie, hold those downtown folks that come in and kind of pollute and then go back to their communities where there's less pollution. It's time to hold. Christelle, the work that you're doing is, as I tell you, it is beyond belief, your ability to just keep going and not let people stop you, as many obstacles that they put in your way. But it is really time for us to like examine each other, push policymakers to change their ways, to make sure that if you're going to go out and vote, really not only see the work that they've done in terms of just environmentalism, but see the work that they've done overall to help the communities that are most affected by this pollution and that are most affected from a healthcare perspective by the byproducts of this pollution. So that's kind of my thoughts for today.
That's very true. You know, Jeff, I was talking about this earlier, and I was bringing up the fact that I've raised my kids in North Minneapolis. I've lived in North Minneapolis my whole life, and my daughters, there was a time when they were in daycare, and I remember every single kid in their class having a nebulizer, and it was so common that we would compare nebulizers, like, oh, I got the new one and you got the old one. Like everyone had one, you know, and that's when you go, and we thought that was normal. And you go outside of the neighborhood, you go out into just Golden Valley on the other side of North Minneapolis, and that was not common. And so when you live within a couple miles away from basically a dumping ground for industrial waste, because that's what North Minneapolis was designed. It was a industrial wasteland surrounded around the communities, Black communities, and then now they're trying to put in this new space in the Little Earth, where you're going to see hundreds of large trucks driving in and out right in front of people's homes, right on the street. And so it's like, it really upsets me, because you think about, like, would they allow this to happen in their own neighborhood? Why is it always happening in Black and brown communities? And why is this continuing to happen? It's very frustrating, and it does give you a feeling of a powerlessness. So
and I would just add that, you know, this is a really tough conversation, because decisions are being made by our friends that I think really are concerned about this issue. So I don't want to malign the city and some of the great activists and environmentalists that are there, but I will highlight that somehow, in some way, these decisions get made at the bureaucratic level. And because it's a tough decision to figure out what to do and how to do it, that we rubber stamp it, look the other way, and then show up at the Sierra Club or at some other rally and say that we're fighting for the people, and those folks don't get to penetrate them. So I don't want to be too radical here, but I think that, you know, we got to really, really push back on that issue and ask our friends, even our intimate and close friends, you know, short of Karen Clark chaining herself to the building, like, why are you doing this? And then we have to get behind that, and that requires a level of uncomfortability that I would hope that this group, and certainly I and Representative Hornstein, are willing to do.
Well, and Senator Hayden, I just want to jump in and not to, you know, kind of take this too far into you know, another issue. But at the same time, this is exactly the issue if you talk about the East Phillips project, and that I know many of the people on this, you know, video and you know, who were just here by audio were there at City Hall. And, you know, we watched our friends, people I respect at City Hall, give 2.5 hours to, you know, agreeing that a certain, you know, city employee would be rehired, and a woman, Cassandra from Little Earth, who's one of the East Phillips organizers. I mean, her story, she got 20 minutes to tell the story of her child who at 12 years old had open heart surgery and died a year later. I mean, it was like, it was devastating. It was devastating to hear this story. And this is the story of East Phillips. And it's the story of this film. It's the story of all these intersectional issues. And that we have to, I hold myself accountable to feel uncomfortable and to feel put on the spot and held accountable. And I expect that of the leaders at our city, at our state, at our national level. Like, it's time. Like, there's no more like, oh, we couldn't, I mean, that's the problem with Minnesota. Oh, I'm a good liberal, so I couldn't possibly have any kind of racist, you know, inclination, you know, and yet we have the biggest disparities in the country. There's something wrong here. There's something wrong, and we have to look at it. And so thank you for bringing up East Phillips. And I really do feel like this whole plastics issue and the work that Stiv has and everyone here has done is related exactly to the Upper Harbor Terminal, East Phillips, you know, it's all related. So
yeah. Before we move on, and if at any time any of you, the panelists that have already spoken, if you have to leave, we will not take it personal. We'd love for you to stay, definitely, and power through this, because it's, you know, people may have questions for you. But I wanted to say, Jeff, Arika Schlager dos Santos said, thanks for co-authoring Environmental Justice Bill 4594, making Mama proud, Senator Hayden. So if you saw that, she wanted to give you some love.
Well, thank you. I was glad to do it, and I'm going to probably have to be one that leaves early. But I wanted to make sure that Christelle and Kyle and others, and my friend Frank and my other friends on this call, just to know that I'm with you. My grandfather bought a house in the Phillips neighborhood 100 years ago. And so I've been able, I'm not 100 years old, obviously, but I've been able to really understand that and see my family's history and their healthcare history and how they've been treated and the folks there. And I'm just dedicated to it. So I was glad to do it. And I want to give a big shout out to former representative, we will never call her former, Representative Karen Clark, who is literally probably chained to that building today. And just want to say that we're going to do everything we can to mitigate whatever damage that the city is doing. And frankly, we can use the heavy hand of the legislature, and Representative Hornstein can tell you, but we would hope that we would change their minds and their spirit. It wouldn't have to do that and make them be able to find better uses for that corridor, mitigate the damage, and find other ways in which we can do the work of the city without continuing to poison the most vulnerable people in our community.
And Jeff, before you leave, I just wanted the whole group to know that, we were colleagues in the House before you were in the Senate. You were talking about health disparities, racial disparities in healthcare long before a lot of people were. And I just, you were inspiring then and now, and I think really, have made such a difference in the state and community by pointing that out. And of course, health disparities are very much parallel to the environmental disparities too. So thank you for that.
Good, I appreciate it. And thank you guys. I'm gonna sign off and get to my family, but I really appreciate this, Crystal. Thank everybody and invite me anytime that you have another get together like this. This is really fun.
Awesome.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so next up, I wanted to I wanted to introduce, well, reintroduce Jessica Arika from the Green Partners Program, who I've had the pleasure of working with the organics recycling program, and then also around a lot of education around recycling in general. And I wanted you to kind of let us know what are the things that you're doing in a profession and in your personal life that's making an impact on the community. And also, how did you feel about this movie? How did it, what is that takeaway? How did it impact you watching this movie?
Okay, thank you very much, Crystal. Yeah, I work at Hennepin County doing a lot of community outreach in relation to a lot of environmental issues, not only recycling. I've worked at the county for 5 years. I'm originally from Kenya. So, and I studied in India. So for my undergrad and master's, I studied in India. So as I was watching the movie, I was like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of India and what was happening, really what's happening over there. And it piqued me because my background, I did environment economics for my master's program. And when I saw all that and the impact, especially on communities of color, I'm like, no, this shouldn't be happening. And the movie was so clear and showing the years as they came, what was happening. And then I was like, oh yeah, it's really well connected and linked. And when you talked about the municipalities, for example, even at Hennepin County, as we talk about recycling, Nema, sorry, that's my daughter. Please. Yeah.
Your daughter's lovely, by the way.
Thank you. No, I'm okay. Nema, be respectful. So anyway, sorry about that. The Hennepin County, we work with the more than 40 cities in Hennepin County. And when it comes to recycling, it's a big challenge, even for us, because the different cities have different like standards or requirements. For example, if you know, like right now in the city of Minneapolis, if you go to any store, you'll be charged 5 cents for the plastic bag. But if you just go on the suburb, I mean, you go like to Target here, you're being charged. Target there, you're not being charged, or something like that, which is very frustrating. And even when it comes like to organics recycling, what I'm very passionate about is many cities don't provide it. Now is when they're coming on board with it. And as a person who grew up in Africa, in Kenya, in Africa, and then coming to the US and seeing how environmental issues are handled, I remember connecting with especially the Native American Indian communities and many African immigrants, the way they relate to the environment. And that is not captured at all. I mean, the voices of communities of colors is not well captured. And yeah, I've worked with Crystal and I've worked with Kyle. I've worked with both of them on some of the projects at the county, and there's a lot of bureaucracy and it's very frustrating, but being passionate about working at the community level brings me a lot of joy when we see changes, because the thing is, when you're there at the county level or even at the city level, sometimes you cannot make a lot of change. We need to listen to the voices from the people in the communities. It's not about us. And on top of that, Hennepin County, if you see our name tags, it's serving residents. So when I came in, I'm like, oh, we need to listen to the voices of the communities before we decide what programs to provide. It's taking time, but it's taking some time, but change is happening. I think that I can say. We have the Disparity Reduction Initiative overall in Hennepin County, and COVID-19 brought everything to the forefront. So I'm also in the team for COVID-19 on community engagement, and we realized that every department was doing different things in relation to connecting with community members, and now we want to do it like come together, because when it comes to health, when it comes to income, when it comes to housing, all that is environmental. Even when it comes like to tree planting, when it comes to tree planting right now, with the commissioners who are there, and with the commissioners, they're insisting about the disparities. They want to know, Commissioner Angela Conley and Commissioner Irene Fernandez, they are demanding what is, we want to know. You're doing these programs. We want to see the impact on different communities. So, but when community organizations come on board and demand for these, I mean, we will, I think the department, they will wake up and listen. And,
I'm sorry.
and at the moment right now, I'm working on what is called socially inclusive outreach, and I'll reach out to Crystal so that we give a list of organizations that I'll be able to reach out to, because what happens sometimes is when you translate material for recycling or trash or whatever you have to do as businesses, or even as businesses, or even at residential level, materials are translated into several languages, but sometimes it doesn't have the impact it's supposed to be having, because some of especially communities of color, we are very oral. I mean, it's oral culture. And it's important, like, to connect with influencers in the community, and then give leeway to the influencers in the community to reach out to their community in the way that is best. Just like the Lao community, we train some trainers and then they reach out to the community members. If I take flyers, like say to my community, I'm Kenyan, I'm from East Africa, I speak my native language and I speak Swahili and I speak English. Kenya has more than 50 tribes. So you can't translate to all those languages, but we speak Swahili in general. And Swahili is spoken across like more than 10 countries in East and Central Africa. And COVID-19 really exposed, like, we never reach out these communities because we're a large African immigrant community who speaks Swahili generally. But, and so like, this is being brought to the forefront in like nothing, I mean, there's a lot that is to be done, and I appreciate this movie, I think should be shared widely so that people see, like, it shouldn't be left to the residents to solve this solution. It's not the resident, it's not the people's fault. The people down there, especially communities of color, it should come from the corporates. They should be charged. I mean, even Belgium, you have your shampoo and they pay for it, the corporate pays for it, but it goes to India or other countries, they don't pay for it. And that is not right.
Yeah.
On a personal level, yeah. Thank you.
Jessica, in like right now, currently, we are in a very interesting time when it comes to the county. We have 2 commissioners now that are women of color, and we've never had people of color on the Hennepin County Commission before. And what you had mentioned, them really reaching out to say, you know, what are these impacts on these certain communities? Have you noticed that, is that very different from before?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Because I'm a person of color, you know, there's some things that happen that only a person of color can be able to tell, that change is happening, or at least somebody's listening. Because sometimes you can talk and nothing is happening. But when we get like a lot of communities of color organizations rising up and really saying, we really need this, we listen, because that's why we are there. That is why.
Well, that's good. That makes me feel hopeful that we've got people that we've elected that are there, that are actually asking those questions to the staff. So that makes me happy that that's happening.
Yeah, like for example, like when it comes to tree planting, an analysis was done. There's the grant program is open right now for organizations to apply to plant trees and stuff like that. So using GIS mapping and really tracking what communities live there, like what was mentioned a little bit earlier, investment is made. And then there's benefits across the board, but where the investment is made is sometimes it just goes to a particular neighborhood, and other neighborhoods don't get anything. So right now, all grants, you have to justify, when you're distributing the grants, you have to justify why you're giving to this organization and not another organization.
Yeah.
And if they are diverse, they must be diverse. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for letting us know that. So those of you who are on this in this conversation that has the ability to apply for a grant or get a fiscal agent, look out for that Hennepin County Green Partners grant that's available for tree planting, because you know we need to do that. We got to get as many trees in the ground as possible. So I'm going to move on to Charles Frempong-Longdon. If you could, what did you think about the movie, and what are you working on right now that that addresses this issue or addresses the overall issue? And if you could unmute yourself too before.
Yeah, most definitely. And I'll try to keep this a little brief because I might have to head out here.
That's fine.
Yeah, but overall, I think I enjoyed the film, especially the way that it kind of illustrated the intersections and how they exist on both ends of the spectrum. I think oftentimes we talk about intersectionality in the positive sense of how we are all interconnected in like a common struggle, but then there's also this consolidated power structure that is really tied together of like the same culprits are responsible for so many different issues of environmental violence. And I just think particularly like my avenue into environmental justice started, my entire family is from Ghana, which is on the west coast of Africa. And I think the first time I went there, my grandfather taught me a lot about limitations, expectations, and the meaning of carved up land. My grandfather's land was carved up and colonized. My mother's land was carved up and colonized. Minneapolis is carved up land and is colonized land, and there are power structures that design the limitations and expectations of folks that live here. I think particularly as we make this transition into social distancing, it becomes very apparent to me that I'm not a vulnerable citizen. I'm a targeted citizen. I've been taking walks around my block often, and within a mile radius of my house, there are 3 police cruisers and no grocery stores. And that does not seem like something that is insignificant. It seems like something that is very deliberate. And we look at it, communities that are designated as environmental justice communities, and we look at the deliberacy behind those of like the arsenic triangle and the issues of environmental violence that exist in the East Phillips community, the Herc incinerator, the highway dividing North Minneapolis, all of these issues regulated to areas of limitation and limited access and agency. And I think a big part of the film that I really resonated was the idea of like putting the responsibility on the consumer of plastic. And oftentimes I feel like these power structures put the responsibility of folks to save themselves while limiting their access, while limiting their agency to get the help that they need to make the moves that they need, and creating this avenue that is so distant for folks to really speak and advocate for themselves. And I think particularly in my work, one of the big projects that I've been working on is the BIPOC EJ table in partnership with Marco, Janiece on this call. I know them very well from working on that project. And the idea of that came just from the idea that Minnesota is not just the land of 10,000 lakes, it's the land of 10,000 tables and 10,000 coalitions. And oftentimes those coalitions are the same, like, they're the same white people. And I think so many people that have been involved in those in this process have had the same common experience of being the only person of color in the room that has to advocate for so many different nuances in the community, and then having those voices watered down in the process of participating in that. And so the BIPOC EJ table emerged out of the idea of what if BIPOC voices were the center and base of the conversations that were happening, and if folks that were designated as vulnerable came together in the fact that we are targeted and we do need to have some sort of consolidated intersectional effort to get ourselves out of this situation. So I think a big campaign that we have been involved in is shutting down the Herc trash incinerator, which is located in North Minneapolis. So that's how I know a lot of the folks on this call. I actually sat down with Frank Hornstein about a month ago, and policy is not my first language, but the policy he was speaking, I got very excited about. But I think like a big thing that we see there is that when you talk about intersectionality, it's important to understand the idea of like nothing happens in a vacuum. COVID-19 does not happen in a vacuum. COVID-19 is a crisis stimulant of folks that are already dealing with higher levels of asthma, higher levels of lung cancer, higher respiratory illnesses and syndromes in that sense that are now dealing with this virus that is being exacerbated by a trash burning entity. If you go on the MPCA website, there's a great little article talking about why you shouldn't burn trash in your backyard. They talk about individuals should not burn trash in their backyard because it can affect your neighbors on the left, your neighbors on the right, anybody who's in the vicinity of the smoke cloud. But when you ask the MPCA about the big trash incinerator in downtown Minneapolis that, fun fact, they turn off during Twins games, there seems to be no answer for why that is allowed to be. So I think that's something that I've been very passionate about for a very long time, and I'm excited that there's a lot of energy behind it and so many folks attacking in various ways, because I think that's the only way we're going to get things done is by, taking on from so many different angles. Yeah, I think I'm kind of rambling at this point.
No, it's totally fine. Thank you, because you're right. They do not burn when the Twins game is happening, when folks that are not living around it are here to enjoy this wonderful festivities of baseball and do not pay to build that stadium. But yet the folks that are that are already going through a hard time and living in a homeless shelter right across the street have to endure the smoke every day. So it's very frustrating, and I appreciate you, and supporting our representative and getting these pieces of legislation passed. So
definitely, and I think I'm also familiar with Frank's great work in our transportation sector as well. Transportation is like a big thing that I've been working on for the past year or so here, just kind of in relation to those borders and limitations that are created. I think a big conversation that has come about is specifically who has access to what. And I think just going back again to like the COVID-19 crisis and social distancing, what is your access to the resources that you need at this point? And what's your access to transportation at this point? If you look at who has transportation, who has access to what kind of transportation in the cities here, you also see all these EJ issues regulated to different parts and different corridors of where folks are regulated to, where you live, where you work, where you grocery shop, and right there's a trash incinerator. Where you live, where you work, where you grocery shop, and right there's a rooftop depot, and all these things that are just regulated to those areas. So,
Yeah. And not to mention, they talk about, we have the worst disparities in the communities of color when it comes to COVID-19, and North Minneapolis is the highest ridership of the Metro Transit, and so we are forced to be piled onto these buses in order to get to where we need to go. So it's just, there's so much involved. There's so much involved. Nicholas, do you have a question?
Yeah, I would actually like to comment something about the disparity factor, because I remember I've been keeping up with the COVID-19 crisis and all that. And one thing that I noticed is that a lot of states that their population is majority white or identify as Caucasian, the majority of the deaths and the majority of the cases of people being infected with COVID-19 are people of color, people of African American neighborhoods who, don't have that access to healthcare usually, that don't have jobs where they can stay at home usually, not for the lack of wanting, but for the lack of resources given to those areas to succeed. So it's really interesting to hear this discussion, because it's very educational, it's very interesting, and especially I think we can all learn something. Clearly, some people know it more than others, and some people don't. But I think a big part of it is just to educate people, to make people understand that there is a lot of disparity, whether or not they see it or whether they passively view it. So I really enjoyed this panel, really.
Yeah,
I just wanted to comment that.
Thank you for commenting on that, Nicholas. I really appreciate that. There was a comment by Arika again to Jessica. She had mentioned, it is a civil rights issue that the informed consent of all language and cultural groups are not equitably informed in the manner most received and give their consent to the health impacts by the city, county, and corporation Civil Rights Act of 1964. thank you for speaking to this access issue. So just, you know, bringing it, talking about the issue of language and being grateful that you had mentioned that, and making sure that we're getting the right language out to folks, because, you know, in the film, the issue of not recycling or not, you know, having the knowledge to recycle correctly, you know, and you had mentioned like there's how many tribes, you know, in one language, so you can't just assume one person speaks Chinese or one person may speak Cantonese. Even though they live in the same area, they might speak two completely different languages. So,
and also translations might be a little
exactly
off-putting in certain cultural groups.
Mm-hmm. You can't assume because somebody's from the same country they speak the same language, and I feel like that.
Well, not even just that.
In this country.
Yeah, but even that, like for example, me being from Guatemala, we use certain slang. While, for example, people from Mexico use different kinds of slang as well. So there's that different cultural aspect. Words that in Guatemala we use that maybe refer to maybe a little more offensive, culturally speaking, in different countries, they would not understand that kind of slang.
Yeah.
Because it's not there. So even in one language group,
yeah,
I could not even imagine you 50 different dialects, 50 different in such a close proximity, how hard that would be to universally apply that, especially when languages, the way they're structured is to express thought, express actions. So in English, you have a certain way of, you know, thinking about certain things, having a way to translate these complicated thoughts that do with the environment, that do with educating people into a totally different way of thinking, that must be incredibly difficult, but it is something that is necessary if we want all of us, not just whites, not just people in the first world, but everywhere, to really understand the environmental impact.
Yeah. I wanted to move on.
I apologize, but I actually have to head out right now.
Okay. Thank you so much, Charles.
Thank you so much for having me, y'all.
Take care.
Yes, thank you.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks
so
again.
We're really limited on time. I wanted to move on to Janiece Watts from Fresh Energy. And Janiece, if you could tell us, you know, quickly, how did this film affect you? And what are you working on right now where we can support you? Especially Fresh Energy does a lot of lobby work at the Capitol. And we want to know how we can support you in your work.
Sure. Thank you. That's my cat meowing in the background. If you hear a little noise, that's just currently talking. So yeah, one of the major things, at least for Fresh Energy as an organization, like so the lobbying that my organization does, certainly will be the issue that Representative Hornstein brought up around incineration waste energy being seen and defined as renewable energy in Minnesota state statute is is a pretty appalling thing. The fact that trash is considered a renewable energy resource akin to wind and solar, I think every one of us would dispute that, and we certainly do. So that's a major piece of policy change that I've myself, like even before coming to Fresh Energy, have always had my eye on of changing. So and I think the reason why that's a really important pillar to go after is because these facilities, the incinerator facilities, they get renewable energy credits, and so it's really a financial incentive for these for incineration to be considered like renewable energy, and so taking out the ability for these corporations, the utilities, facilities to earn these renewable energy credits, basically like subsidies, to continuously burn. And of course, like we saw in the film, I wrote down marked the scene of Toy Story, because I love Toy Story, but that scene of Toy Story 3 where the toys are, on that conveyor belt into the trash monster, into the gigantic burning pit, was very brilliant to put in the film, but I think really illustrates like these things have to be fed the incinerators have to be fed continuously. So there's an incentive to just keep wasting. There's an incentive to just keep throwing stuff away. And so if we can take out that financial incentive, that really just, I think will really tip the scales. And we certainly don't incentivize recycling, composting, reducing, reusing, and certainly not putting the responsibility on these producers to manufacture things that can actually be recycled or composted or reused, because they don't have the financial incentive to do so. They don't have the financial push to do so. So that's why it's really important to get it out of that statute. That's fine with renewable energy.
Yeah, you're totally right. I remember actually Kyle, she had mentioned something like this earlier, was you know, the EPA or the European Union. You wanna mention that, Kyle, about the extended user responsibility?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean, they did mention in the film that somehow, I mean, and obviously they have a different political system in the European Union, but how were they able to get past the lobbyists and get that extended producer responsibility where these companies are actually paying for the final result of their product, you know, and they're more than happy to put that, you know, and promote recycling as this be all end all. Like, isn't it awesome that we support recycling, when that is not the answer? It's truly that, you know, reduce it in the first place. So yeah, I would love to get more information from Stiv or, you know, other lawmakers who were like, how were they able to do that? And I think we kind of know the answer, and it's like grassroots organizing and persistence and collaborating. Like, we know the answer, and it's just like, we have to do it.
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm just so tired of them shaming the people for not recycling, which, yes, we need to recycle, of course, you know, but you shame
all that trash.
Yeah, you know, you shame us for doing it or not doing it correctly, but the reality is the product should have never been made in the first place, period, point blank. And the folks that are making this product need to be paying for it.
And we don't have laws here around extended producer responsibility at all. And so that's also a policy change that we really need to pursue.
Yeah.
One comment about that. I like the way the film paralleled what was going on in India's, you know, kind of quick disposable packaging, one-time use, versus the European Union one. And I thought it was like, because these were the same companies that were offering the products, which is very interesting to me. That shows that obviously there had to be a financial incentive in the European Union, or maybe they even would have financially penalized these companies if they did not do it.
That's what it is, the penalization.
Yeah, which is
penalized if you don't. Yeah, so if you're not penalized in one place, then you're going to be able to give them the crappy product.
Yeah.
But it's also poverty that leads to those one-time, you know, those little sachets. They're really cheap, and if you live on a like unbelievably like limited income, that I'm pretty sure, like, even though I grew up on food stamps, I never lived at that level of poverty where you have to buy 1 ounce of shampoo in a plastic sachet. Like, that's about poverty, and they're of course exploiting poverty to like this sickening degree.
Yeah, well, they're exploiting them, and the reality is they were, before those sachets became available, they were able to bring a cup or a bottle,
right,
and have it filled up.
I just wonder why. No, because I think about
most horrible, you know, that's colonialism and imperialism at its like most horrid. Not most, but
as is extending.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, sorry, Janiece.
Just about the film. There's one more thing that struck me about it, and then I should move on. But I just really want to acknowledge all the women that were working as waste pickers, who were obviously working as advocates and activists. And it just really struck me when one of the speakers in the film said, without women's labor, the waste in the plastic industry would collapse. And it just made me think of so many of like women's strikes and like what happened? What would happen if we all just stopped working?
Yeah.
And
The world will fall apart.
place of the supply chain, the pollution, the health impacts, this is all born, well, it's not all, but it's majority born on women's backs, right? And really, we really need to lift up that this is a racial justice issue and also a gender justice issue.
Yeah, you know, and that actually kind of that makes me want to veer off to Marco Hernandez, because you had mentioned, and I'm obviously going to ask you, like, well, I mean, how did this film impact you and also inspire you? But at the same time, you had mentioned ecofeminism, and that really struck an interest. So I wanted to get some more information on that, what that was, and just kind of dig in a little bit more about some of the work that you're doing, because what you were mentioning earlier was just sounded very fascinating.
Yeah. I'll start out with the ecofeminism first and then just go from like in a line explaining the other stuff. With ecofeminism, we invited Wendy Cruz. Wendy Cruz is the leader of Via Campesina in Honduras. And she has a whole network of organizers, farmers, rural community members, Indigenous members, and also Black descendant members as well. And what ecofeminism is pretty much, through Wendy's eyes, from what she explained to me, is basically not only are you fighting for the environment, but also you're putting gender equity, racial equity into the forefront as well, because without those, with only fighting for environmental justice and neglecting racial justice, gender equity, and all the other social justices behind that, you're really not working towards environmental justice at all. And a lot of the things that Wendy did talk about was with the increase of the climate crisis, the harm that it does, you see a lot more femicides, especially in Latin America too. Domestic abuse towards women. And so a lot of her work not only is focused on environmental justice, but also gender equity and fighting for gender justice issues too. And so I'm gonna put that in the back burner for now. And so a lot of what this movie inspired in me was that I got to see not only the experiences of those, but got to see a little bit of my experience in that movie too. For those of you who don't know me, I grew up in a refinery city. I grew up in Richmond, California, in the East Bay, in the Bay Area, and it's the home to the second biggest refinery to the state of California, the Chevron refinery. And when I say the second biggest, you wherever you go throughout the city, you literally can see the refinery. It's built on a couple of isolated hills. And it's built upward. So wherever you go, you can always see the smokestacks. You can always see it shining and shooting plume and smoke throughout the whole city. And another part that struck me from the movie is that there were a lot of people who wanted to make a change were also putting their lives at risk. And those are coming from the extractive actors, from those companies going, having drones go to their places, threatening them, or basically, for one instance, one of the ladies having her dog shot at and then her house shot at. When we went on the delegation trip to Central America, we went to a small village that was next to a mining project. And basically there's where they're extracting a lot of precious metals that are being used in the technology that we're using right now, cell phones, computers, cars, etc. And what those companies have been doing, American and Canadian companies, is displacing Indigenous, rural, and Black communities throughout the rural countryside of Honduras, and using the power and force and influence of the Honduran government specifically Honduran police and military personnel that are funded by the American government through foreign military aid that goes to the country to protect those mining companies, because the president of Honduras literally has assets and stakes in those mining companies too. And so when we went into that small village, we went to the river where they were dumping cyanide, which is used to extract the metal from the earth. And they've been doing this for a while, and the community decided to rise up and fight back. And by doing so, a lot of them were arrested, thrown out of their houses by the military. And when we went to go to the community, it was right after they managed to kick out some of those extractive actors and staff, but there was still a big military presence. And when we went to the river, I remember seeing some of the soldiers looking back at us. And right when we were leaving with some of the community leaders that were showing us around, they shot some rounds of bullets, not directly at us, but in our general vicinity, just to send us a warning that, you know, we're still here. We have the power to take your life, and we have the influence and law from the Honduran government to do this. We witnessed this in Honduras. Some of these atrocities caused by these extractive actors. We did some community meetings in the Twin Cities with Attorney General Keith Ellison and Representative Ray Dean, and we immediately made the connection to the similarities of, we have mining companies kicking Indigenous and Black people out of their communities, and here you're having pipelines displacing Indigenous communities and trash incinerators polluting and contaminating Black and Brown communities. And so what we decided to do, and Representative Hornstein knows some of this story, was to come up with a bill that would totally be one of the first steps towards environmental justice. In partnership with Stiv, the Center for Earth and Energy Democracy, we created the Cumulative Impacts Bill, House File 3753, or what we're calling it, the Minnesota Frontline Communities Protections Act. And Karen Clark was the first one, I don't know if she was the first one, but she introduced cumulative impacts, and at first was working hard to have it for the whole state, but you know, due to the politics of the time and trying to do good work for a community, managed to pass cumulative impacts for the Phillips community in Minneapolis. And so for those of you who don't know what cumulative impacts are, it's basically when a facility like a trash incinerator, a foundry, or a refinery wants to be built, especially in a community, in an environmental justice community that's a lot of BIPOC folks, a lot of poor folks, they would have to go research the type of chemicals that the facility would be emitting, how that would harm the community, the makeup of the community, and the health disparities that would arise from that. And we're trying to do this for the whole state. And with the help from Representative Hornstein and the leadership of Representative Herr and Senator Melissa Franzen, we're working very hard to get through this, and also with the BIPOC table too, building a social media campaign with it, because this is totally one step in which we can shut down HERC and also prevent another HERC from being built in an environmental justice community too.
Wow. Marco, I think you should write a book. I really do. That story was very inspiring and very upsetting. In a lot of ways.
And amazing to tell.
Yes, and amazing. Did you like that story, Gilbert?
Yes, I did.
All right. Wow. And we lost Ukasha. I feel bad that we missed Ukasha.
He might still be here by, let's see.
I don't see him. Kyle, did you want to quickly mention what Ukasha is doing in South Minneapolis? And then I think we're going to have to wrap up if anyone had any questions. But if you want to tell the folks what Ukasha is doing in South Minneapolis and with zero waste work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I first met Yukasha at one of the things that Minneapolis Climate Action does is help to coordinate the green teams meetings of the different environment committees of the neighborhood associations in the city, and really looking to, you know, make that just more effective and impactful. And I first met Yukasha there, and he came to speak about a plastic bag ban at the state level. And this was just a few months ago, maybe in January. And so, you know, I reached out to him right away and was like, well, you know, we can't do that because of preemption legislation that said no city in the state can do a plastic bags ban. But anyway, we connected, and he runs an organization that he talked about and that I talked about earlier called FREYO. It's the Fortune Relief and Youth Empowerment Organization that works with Somali youth and especially men to really, he's working on mental health, but also really, really focused on climate issues and pollution issues. And he also introduced me to Fartoon Ismail, who runs the Somali American Women's Action Center. And we had some amazing events planned, like right before COVID hit, to really, you know, they had an event planned at MIA around their, because basically Fartoon is training Somali women in business skills, and they're creating reusable bags called dombil. And they're actually going to move into the same space as the Lindell Neighborhood Association, Kingfield, and Minneapolis Climate Action. And so we have like probably 6 projects that we're all working on together around waste. But of course, Yukasha and Fartoon see the intersection of, you know, climate refugees. I mean, if you just look at Somali, you know, migration, or whether it's from Central America, you know, all these different places around the world where climate is pushing people to the brink of survival. And of course, that's creating climate refugees. And so we're really excited to be partnering with Yukasha and with the Somali American Women's Action Center. One of the most amazing things about Yukasha was, like, he told me he will stand in front of groups of Somali men and call himself a feminist. And I just was like, that is so awesome that this man in a you know, kind of patriarchal, on the outside culture, will call himself a feminist. That's
I love it.
A personal
I love it.
I love. So yeah, that's kind of the work that he's working on. And Christelle and with MN Renewable now and Minneapolis Climate Action have some super cool projects that we're working on with both those organizations.
Yes.
And I'm sure Yukasha, he just reminds me, he's like this, you know, young Obama. He's just like, he's going places. So it is just super cool to be working with him. And I'm sure he could have told his own story way better than I told it, but I'm sure he has young children, and I'm sure he
had to get out of here. He had to get out. So I wanted to mention, you guys, those who are still on the call, we will be sending out, Kyle's going to send out some information on how you can take action after leaving this this amazing discussion. We are going to be kicking off a zero waste committee. So we definitely want you to be a part of it, because we're going to be working on things, hopefully on the city level, state level, supporting Representative Hornstein over here, Janiece Watts, Marco, all of the work that everybody is doing. And then, of course, there's always funding available. And Jessica even shared a link to the grant that's available right now. If you want to be able to get some funding to do some amazing environmental work. So it's good to be a part of these committees so that you can get connected to be able to take action instead of just sit and be upset with all of the issues that are happening. There's ways to be able to take matters into your own hands and actually help create change. There was one thing that I wanted to talk about real quick before we leave, or before I ask question, and it's just really short snippet, was the plastic bags issue. It was rolled back on the state level recently, and that is something that I'm hopeful that once we get another administration and a change of leadership on the legislative level, that we could get that back, because that is an issue. But I wanted you guys to know that there is a lobbyist group that these large corporations fund. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay this lobbyist group to speak for them. And the group is called Ameripen. Ameripen's lobbyists bounce around the entire country, and they monitor about 450 bills at any given time. They have registered lobbyists all over the entire country. And their members, the members of this lobbyist group, are General Mills, Dow Chemical, Procter & Gamble, PepsiCo, and all kinds of other smaller groups. And they are always, and I'm sure Frank Hornstein has heard of these guys and knows very well who they are. They are always at the Capitol, and they're always lobbying our legislators. And even if you go to their website and you look up Ameripen, they have unbelievable arguments that advocate for single-use plastics and why they're good for us. And anyone who is not an environmentalist and doesn't know the deeper issues, it would be easily swayed by their arguments. So Ameripen is definitely somebody that we need to keep, or a group that we definitely need to keep our eye open for.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. Yukasha just popped back on. Do we want to give him a minute to just give?
Yes, definitely. I think that would be a respectful thing to do. Hi, Yukasha. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me back. My 4-year-old unplugged the charger from my computer, and I didn't know it was unplugged. My computer had a battery issues, and it just went off on me. And she was like, "Dad, are you done meeting?" So yeah, thank you all again. So what do you want me to say?
So how did you feel about this movie, and how did it impact you, and what are you doing to address this issue?
First of all, thank you. I didn't watch the movie. I was one of the essential. I am one of the essential workers at this unprecedented time. I've been helping my community today to apply for them on the housing assistance. So I didn't get the time to watch the movie, but I promise I will watch that. So what am I doing right now that's addressing the environmental issues that's ongoing? I've been working with the young people in educating them on how they can work for a better climate. Who is right now being affected by the environment, by the climate right now? It's the young generation who are really affected. And it's them who will actually face the reaction of these climatic issues. Let's say few months ago, we had the fire going on in Australia. We have seen floodings going on all around the world as well. People are asking for relief and all those kind of things. I mean, if we can prevent and if we can stop this with, like at grassroots in every community, I feel like it's something that we can do. When we talk about the environmental justice thing, I feel like the communities that are being hit hard by pandemics or by the environmental effects are the poverty and the low-income communities, the minority communities, the marginalized communities. Those are the communities that feel the effects of this. Will you imagine? I've been tuning in to watch what the rich people have been doing in these lights of COVID-19. And I have seen people taking vacation, going to private islands, going to private places where they can quarantine themselves, mansions and everything. And I've seen on the other side, like the contrasting image of low-income minority Americans fighting really hard to at least make a bread to the table. And there's a time when I was talking to a mother over the phone in the past few months, in the past 1 month, she was contemplating, she's an asthmatic mother, diabetic as well. She was contemplating, I mean, it was really sick. I was really feeling bad, like when she can also call me in the middle of the day asking like, hey, can I go outside to at least bring a food for my children. They've been eating one meal a day. And they have been, she said she was really scared that she can catch this virus. And she is right now living with, have a condition right now. So it was really touchy for me. I have been going to the community, organizing people who can drop food to families who need it. So in general, the communities who are feeling the effects of this pandemic and all the climate issues are the minority communities. They need to be educated. They need to be uplifted. They need to be bring to the decision. They need to be in the decision-making tables. So in my work, I have been working with the young people and the women from the East African communities for them to design a solution for the climate. What have they been doing? They have been working on the dumbbell challenge. So the dumbbell challenge is the towback challenge. I've seen cities who have been really fighting hard to ban the plastic bags, which was really the main cause of the pollution. So these women,
Yeah.
yeah. So these women have been sewing the tote bags, and they've been educating people to use those reusable, energy-saving, environmental saving tote bags. And we have been teaching their children, on how they can, do that campaign to educate the community the larger community on the benefit of this. We have been on Rep. Frank office the other day, talking to him about how can we ban the ban for the plastic bag. Yeah, so pretty much it's like everything has to happen on grassroots. For us to do an action, we have to educate our local grassroots communities on the benefit and the effect of climate. Many minority communities doesn't get the chance to get the environmental education they need. It's either due to language, due to literacy, or due to other technology or any other issues. They don't get any cultural specific training that are being entitled to them. Like this is the recycling program, which is a culturally specific, and it will be in Somali or in Swahili or any other language. So what the local government need to do is to engage the communities. It takes a participatory approach to bring a solution to the environment, or to bring an idea that will help our climate. So it does take a community and a village to save the climate. So my call to action today is to engage the local minority communities in every aspect of life and in environment and climate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Asha. Thank you so much.
I want to reiterate the event that we have, and thank you. That was amazing, Yukasha. I mean, I don't know. I'm so thrilled that you're in my sphere of action, in this world for humans and the whole planet. Like, I'm thrilled. But I also, on June 1st, we're having, this, Christelle and I are planning this zero waste movement kickoff meeting, and we hope that you can come, virtually, or most likely virtually. We would just love, to have you there. And I know we're looking forward to many partnerships coming up, and I hope that's just one more. So thank you for everything that you do, Yukasha.
I'm gonna
thank
ask.
you.
So there are Pia, who is on the in this meeting, had a question for Ukasha, and she said, I'm sorry, if you wanted to and introduce yourself, Pia, you can. Otherwise, I can just ask the question. But the question is, how can young people connect with you for activism? So I'm assuming young person.
Yes. Yeah, I try a lot to say I'm a young person myself.
Me too.
Yes. By the way, I was right now. I was running for a city council in Edina, and one of the main thing that I was using was, "I am a young person who will bring an energetic solution." And yeah, a lot of people will be like, "Really?" Yeah. So yeah, so young people are amazing. They are the doers of this century. And how am I connected with them, or how can I connect? What was the question? Is it connecting, or how will I?
How can they connect with you to get to help you with the work that you're doing?
Yes, I was really passionate from back in the days when I, came to this country. I was really passionate on empowering the young. First of all, in my journey, when I came to America, I had only two things with me. One was a bag full of my clothes and a dream. That dream was the dream of making myself a better person. I grew up in a third world country, yes. I grew up in not so good families, yes. I didn't grow up in privilege or wealth, yes. But how can I use that voice of me being, who I want to be to uplift? How can the energy of my soul serve the community? And that's what I call purpose. Sometimes you can understand that you're going towards your purpose while you're not understanding it. So I've been going to the Somali Mall, reaching out to people, especially the parents who are there, like asking them, what do they need? I mean, how can I be a help to them? And these are the people who have trekked miles and miles to come to this amazing country so that they can live in a second chance. And one of the main things that worked for me is that when you educate or you empower one young person, the whole community will show up. We are an oral community who have been believing in words of mouth. I was just tutoring this group of young people. They liked how I was tutoring them. They liked how I was so compassionate and, loving the work that I was doing at that time. And they did report back to their parents, and then the parents will give that information to the community, and then I had a huge people. So it's this program that I started, which was called Let It Go program. This program was teaching the young people on how they can get the social emotional support they needed in their life, how they can resolve anger, how they can resolve conflict within them, how they can be good leaders in the future. And when I was starting this, I started with an idea that I will only have a cohort of 10 youth. And then the number grew up. Within a month, I just got 25 youth showed up in my little space. And I was like, no, I didn't actually plan for 25. And then I got some volunteers who can help me. And then it went to 45, up to 107 youth who really graduated at the end of the 3 months to be a community peace ambassadors. So we are an oral community, and once we like the program, the whole village will know it. Yeah. So one of the blessing thing I've done in the young people life is to listen them. The young people needs to be listened. Right now, minority communities and any other struggling community have been focusing more on bringing a bread to the table. So the father will work 2 jobs, the mother will work 3 jobs, and then the child, who is a teenage child, will be stranded in between that platform where they don't get the parenting they need. It's either one single mother or one single parent is present and they are busy on their daily bread, and they really need it. So in those programs and activities of engaging them, I have listened to their inner voice. I have listened to them. What do they need? How can I be a help to them? We communicated with them in many ways as we could, whether it's children who have been in shelters, children who are homeless, children who are in foster care. I get to meet this amazing group of young people in my life that I am working with right now, even today.
Hey, Ukasha, if someone wants to like find you to kind of help you
That's
with
what I was just gonna say.
or join your work, how can they reach out to you?
Yes, they can reach out to me either through email. We have a website. It's like Frayo, FRAYEO.org, as in organization, ORG. And then my email will be info, @frayo.org. So that will be my contact information. But believe me, there is so much in the communities that I serve. Whether it's mental health issues, whether it's youth empowerment, whether it's economic empowerment, they really need. And even not even within right now, even after the COVID-19, I'm really scared that a huge number of families will remain in abject poverty due to the effect of COVID-19. So as we talk about the environment, once families remain in poverty, then environmental sustainability cannot happen. Like I can't talk to someone about environment and climate when they're hungry, like when they are just fighting for their survivals. So we actually need to see as well the interrelational ways the climate and the economic well-being and the political well-being and the human right is connected to make us all live in the world that we want and a better place.
Absolutely.
I have a question for the group. Thank you so much for saying these things. My question to the group is, how do we expand into the youth communities of all different language groups? I'm an interpreter. I interpret Portuguese and German. And the Civil Rights Act of 1964 says that we have a right, all of us who speak other languages, to have interpreters at our access. Children often are in the position of interpreting for parents, for example. But for medical access, for environmental access, how do we expand the message in our different oral traditions that it is a right and a duty, especially where there's any federal funding, that interpreters and access to material orally and written is a duty of the different governmental organizations to provide? How do we expand that message? How do we take that civil right?
Anyone want to answer that question?
That's a good question. So how can we expand that duty as a group? To my understanding, the only way we can expand that will be through a participatory approach, inviting the communities that we will be serving, who are really needing the language to be on those, like to be, I don't know how I can say this, but the communities that needs to be reached, needs to be involved.
Yeah.
So
you need allies. You need allies. And that's the thing is, it's hard for somebody who, if English is not a second language, we live in a country where if you don't speak English, you automatically are looked at as you're a second class citizen. If you're in the room and you have an accent, they automatically look at you as you're a second class citizen. They automatically put you at the bottom of the totem pole and assume that you know what you're talking about, or you don't know what you're doing. And so the reality is they need allies. And just like the civil rights movement in the 60s and the women's rights movement, we needed allies. The women needed men to speak up for them, and the Black community needed white people to show up in arms with them and march. And so that's really how it needs to happen. Because the reality is if the majority of our elected officials and our leaders are English speakers, the majority of our elected officials and our leaders are white males. So they don't know what it's like to be in a room and not be heard or understood or disregarded because of the way they speak or the way they look, then they're not going to know to defend the rights of a person that English is not their first language. So the reality is we need folks that look like our leaders to come to our leaders and say, hey, you know, you're forgetting population, entire constituency that voted you into where you're at, and you need to be to make sure that they are all included in this and included in all of these things that are available to them. So,
and that's the only way we can find. The only way to find the need is to bring people who really need it on the table. Like, let's say the local government can send out surveys, like which language will you prefer on this? And in that way, people can get the chance to list on those. Go out to the communities, don't knock, reach out to the communities, ask them the resources and the tools that the government or or any organization or any group is doing. Is it helping them? Or is it like okay if English if English is a problem? I mean, what kind of language can they use to have it on there? So I can be a Somali and then someone else can be a Swahili. There's people who look like me who are Somali, but they are born and raised in Kenya, and they don't understand the Somali, but they understand Swahili. So you can't assume that person to be a Somali speaker. You can reach out to that huge Somali Kenyan population, ask them, what do you guys need? Do you guys need Swahili or Somali? And then they can give you their preference. So basically reach out to communities, bring them together on those tables, send out surveys, do door knocking, figure it out, what do they need?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna wrap this up. I wanted to actually have this wrapped up 30 minutes ago, but hey, 10:30. It is 10:31, and I want to start eating this plantain that was fried for me. The discussion started, so it's called.
What an awesome conversation! Oh my God,
this is amazing, and I'm so glad that we were able to do this again. And we are me and Kyle, we're going to reach out to everyone who was involved in this group discussion, the BIPOC table, and the discussion last week around this movie, and we want to keep this going, and we're going to send out some information. We'd love for you guys to join the Zero Waste Committee. You're not going to be serving on a board. You're not voted in, but we'd like you to have part in it, because when things come up, like St. Louis Park, they were able to pass an ordinance that says if you restaurant can give you a straw unless you ask for it. I mean, what a unique piece of what a unique ordinance. But it's things like that we can do together as a group. And when that comes up, then we have a group that can show up at City Hall or can show up at the Capitol and speak out for these different things that we're working on. So I'm hoping that you guys can join. Thank you so much for coming. It's just this has been an amazing experience, and I'm very amazed by how many people are out here doing this amazing.
Yeah. One thing I was going to add, Crystal, there's cities like my city in Edina who doesn't have any climate action plans. So I have been really working hard to make sure cities like that have the action plan that they need. So if anyone can join me on that, that would be awesome as well.
See, that's something that we can add to the list. That would be so. Let's get some work done, and so thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, just a quick one with the discussion about reaching out to communities that speak English as a second language. That is something that is a work in progress at Hennepin County, and as I mentioned, we are doing what is called socially inclusive outreach. We already have the plan in place, so we are documenting organizations that are going to reach out to and do a survey. And I'm cognizant of the fact that we might not reach all organizations, but at least we are starting somewhere. And as mentioned, by Okasha. The thing is, like, the different cities have different they have different standards on some things, and the county tries to recommend what needs to be done. But power from the residents themselves asking and even going to their respective cities and demanding for some of this is what really works. Just like in Minneapolis, it's really working very well. Yeah.
That's a good point. I thank you for saying that. That's really important because
That's really
we
awesome.
forget that the county has so many cities involved. And if the different cities are not demanding certain things, then, or willing to listen to certain things, then you can only do so much. So that's good to know. I'll keep my eye open for that. And please reach out to me and Freo and all of the organizations so that we can help you on that outreach.
And we'll be sending out a kind of recap of, you know, the panels and all the resources that people have shared, and kind of like it'll say a zero waste resource guide, but just to be clear, this is not just about zero waste. It's like everyone who's spoken tonight, this is way bigger than just making less waste. This is about humans and our hearts and our families and our communities and our, you know, the soul of our nation, basically. And I don't say that, you know, even to be dramatic. I really believe that's what is at stake. And that if we join together, I'm that bulldog on a pant leg, stubborn optimist. Like, we can do this, and I think get at the heart of the issues, you know, that have brought us all together. Anyway, so we'll be sending out, you know, resources. And thank you again, Representative Hornstein, and thanks for everything that you have done. And Jessica and Arika and Luther and everyone who's not on video. Thanks for being here, and we appreciate you. And we'll be in touch, but please be in touch with us if you have any feedback or questions or concerns. And again, thank you.
Good night.
See you later.
Good night. Bye.
Bye, Luther. Bye, Margaret. Bye, Pia.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good night. Bye, Arika.
Yeah,
Bye. Greetings and thank you. Blessings.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye, Gilbert.
Bye, Gilbert.
Oh, is it Jessica? Okay.
Mom, my dad here?
Nope.
When is he gonna be?
Coming to get you?
No, when is my dad gonna come and get me?
I don't know.
Thanks for being here, Gilbert.
Mom.
Yep.
I'll be right downstairs.
Okay.
Come get me at the door.
All right.
Right on, Gilbert. Bye, Kasha.
Okay, bye. Bye, guys.
Thank you so
Bye.
Bye.
Ah.
Adios.
Adios.
I'm coming right now.
Hang up.
I'm in the front door. I'm in the front door.
Oh, all right.
What I said.
That was great, Kyle.
Yeah.
What I said.
Hi, Gilbert.
Hi, bye.
Oh, I'm surprised he lasted that long.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Oh, that was awesome. That was a really great discussion. That was an unbelievable panel. Very impressive panel, I will say.
That was incredible.
You know that one phone that's up there? Yeah. That's old phone that you had? Old phone that
Yeah,
you had?
I didn't let you have it, but what's up? No. So I think it was really cool. There was at any given moment, there was almost like 30 people on there at one
I
time.
know. Every once in a while I would write it down. I'm like, oh, there's like 25, 27. Yeah.
There's like 27, yeah.
Yeah.
I think there was like 28 people at the very most.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
It was.
I copied and pasted the discussion in my notepad just in case.
I did too just now. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to repeat the mistake from last time.
It's just interesting that last time it disappeared.
I know. And I swear, like we were doing this at the end of last week. And I remember going like, oh, I'm going to copy paste it. And then I don't know where I put it.
All gone. It was all gone.
But anyway, we got this one. We got this one. Yeah.
Well,
and I
have to figure out what's going on with the Gilbert's dad said he's on his way, and that was an hour ago.
Who was that other guy who was like, he never said anything, but he was on the video for a little bit?
Brian?
Yeah.
That was a Facebook friend. I had posted it on Facebook and was like, hey, you guys should join this discussion. So he
decided like Facebook Live thing for it.
I know, we got to figure that out.
It's not hard. I just forgot. I just like completely forgot.
I know. And if I would have done it, it probably would have been, no offense, but it probably would have been better if I had hosted the Zoom, but I can't. There's no way I'm going to be able to pay for a regular.
You know what? I can put you on. I'm pretty sure. Let me see if I should be able
with my 5,000 friends.
Right.
I mean, when I post something, I get so many likes. It would have so many people tune in.
It would have been, and I don't even think it mattered like who did the Zoom. Maybe it does. But it's
because I tried. I looked into it and was like, "Ooh, can I connect this to my Facebook?" But I don't because it's your account that it's on. So you would have had to.
I want to see if I can add you as like an admin. Where's my?
It would be nice to know for next time, at least.
Yeah. Because I mean, if you had Facebook Lived this, if you had Facebook Lived it, that would have been awesome.
There would have been so many people on it.
Shit.
And
Shit.
Next time.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, you know
when
what?
The next environmental documentary comes out, we're gonna do this again.
Well, you know what? I feel like Stiv, like, what have we shown him in the last 2 weeks? Like, we've shown him this amazing group of activists in this city. Like he said,
come back and he's gonna make a movie, and we're all gonna be in it.
Yeah, yeah.
Reality.
Let me go to my Zoom account. It's just bugging me because or I can just give you the login to it.
That's true. Let's not worry about it right now.
But it just was like, I knew how to. I can just I'll give you the login, and then you can use it too. Because unless I'm doing like a board meeting, I mean, I'm not using it for big things like this. Like, it's mainly with you. So.
Well, yeah, and honestly, that's kind of been a tough thing with our board meeting because you can only do it for 40 minutes if it's more than 4 people or something stupid.
Yeah.
But resorting to hangouts, which has been fine.
Yeah. Well, I'll send you my login because I mean, they have enough customers. They don't need one more.
That's my thing. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah. You can just totally use it. I wonder if I have it in my spreadsheet.
Well, I gotta figure out what's going on with this boy's dad.
Yeah.
Call him.
I'm calling him now.
Thank you.
Here, he's on.
Daddy-o, where are you?
Where are you, Dad? You're wearing my sweater. How was your bike ride earlier?
No, it was not.
I heard you lost your shoe in the creek.
Yeah, I lost my shoe. Hey, Daddy, are you coming to get me right now?
Michelle, so I had to wait on her. She had to wait on her son and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, right.
That's not how you talk to your
I'm
dad.
just playing with you.
All right.
You at the
Get
store.
dressed. Get dressed. Get dressed. No, that you're wearing my sweater.
I like wearing
No.
sweater. What?
Please take off my hoodie and go put on some normal clothes. Your clothes.
I
Your
mean, I
clothes.
got a shirt.
Go
under
put
this.
on your clothes and some socks. Gilbert, please go.
You just
Find another hoodie, is what I'm saying. I don't want you wearing my hoodie. I love this hoodie. It's open in the back. It's a girl's sweater. It's clearly a girl's sweater. It has a crisscross back thing.
Where?
Back here. It shows off your lower back. It's a women's hoodie. Go put on another hoodie. I care because it's mine. Go change
But
it.
it's mine.
Go.
It's mine now, buddy.
All right, well, I'm going to call your dad and tell him not to come. Then go get your other hoodie. Go. Change now. Oh, my God. Kyle, I'm going to kill this kid.
Kill me then after the hug.
I love you.
I thought you wanted to kill
No,
me.
go.
No.
Go. Change it.
You
And
gotta kill me.
you can come
You gotta
back.
kill
See, this is why I don't want you wearing my hoodie, because you got my stuff is falling out of the pockets. Are you wearing my pants too? You are. That's why my cards are falling out. You're wearing my dirty pants. Go change your clothes. This stuff is falling out of his pockets. Go, Gilbert.
Don't take my passport with you.
Oh, God, I'm so glad that fell out. Oh, I've never gotten that back.
Oh my God.
Kids. What are you eating out of a fish bowl?
A cracker jar.
You're down to your last crackers.
I have a few more, but this was like a good weird mixture at the bottom.
Nice. The crumbs are always the best flavor.
Right? I need like second dinner.
Cheers. If you have wine left, I'm going to pour my...
I gotta get a sip.
All right. We're going to cheers. Oh my God. You should show Gilbert that tsunami. Is that earthquakes?
Cheers, kampai.
Woo! I don't have a wine glass.
Blink.
Next time I see you. Bushman is cheersing his.
Woo! Bring it in. What's he got?
He's so patient with me. He let me be in his apartment during this whole process and was quiet when he wants to watch his movies.
Aw, damn! I lost like track of. I had no idea it was 10:30.
10:30, girl.
Come the hell out till 10:30.
I'm a bad host. I don't know how to shut people down because I like listening to everyone. I'm the type of person I can sit and listen to people till 3 a.m. So I gotta.
I think people felt like, oh my God, this is torturous. Like that was it was like a great conversation. That's why they.
Yeah, and people stayed. They stayed till the end. So cheers.
Isn't Ukasha great? Like, and I just like walked through.
He's adorable.
Oh
too.
my God! And he's like the best dresser. Oh my God! Always has on like amazing floral jackets with cool, like he's such a badass. And I walked through Carmel Mall with him, and I just like I could tell like people respected him, and he was like the shit. He was just like, and he's not arrogant. He's not.
What is he doing out in Edina? Fuck that place. I don't understand. Like, does he not know that Edina is the worst place for anybody of color to live?
Right? Well, it's not like Minneapolis is, you know.
Worse. Yeah, Indian, but you know what I'm talking about. He's Somali. He's a black man. It is the worst place to be. And to run for office, man, if they elected a Somali man, I would be like shocked.
You know what? There's actually like there are pockets in Edina that have.
There are pockets, but those pockets are gerrymandered as fuck.
But you know what? The good white liberal, people out there would probably love to vote for somebody like him,
Once they get to know him. But when you're looking at population, to get in front of that many different people and actually make an impression, the reality is that's hard.
It is. But I mean, if anybody's up to it, he is. I mean,
oh, I know he is.
5 minutes into meeting him, I'm like, okay, I am going to be following up with this guy and meeting him. I mean, and I've really respected the way he has, well, first, this is a two-part thing. I like the way he has stepped out of the way and let Fartoon, as a Somali woman leader, lead. He hasn't always tried to be the, oh, I'll show you what to do, But also Fartoon is like, move out of the way, Ukasha, I've got this. It's really kind of cool to watch their interaction.
That's great.
And just how she holds her space and he doesn't act like an asshole about it,
I like it.
Yeah.
He seems like a really great guy. I definitely want to get to know him. Yeah, that's super cool.
Well, and I think Marco and Nazir, like Nazir said he would come to the June 1st thing. God, do you think I guess we won't be able to do that in person, right?
No.
God, I want.
I'm tired of the Zoom crap. I know. There, that's better. You don't have a hoodie? Anyway, let me let you go. This boy wants attention.
Go eat. Thank you for an amazing night.
Thank you too. You're amazing. I wouldn't do this without you.
Me either. Nope. You're the best.
You are too.
Can't believe I am. Mwah. Good night.
Good night.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Kyle said bye. Bye. Said bye, Gilbert.
Bye.
See ya.